Hi, this is Esther with Discover Your Origins. In this video, I'm going back to the beginning of my James Langford Descendancy project and just reviewing what I know so far. I recently finished up doing the descendancy work for William Langford and Susanna Langford, who are children of James, and found all of the descendants that I could find for those two children. And so the next step would then be to go on to ASA. But before I do that, let me just review James. When I first started working on James Langford, I didn't have any sources in FamilySearch for him. There was none. And that's pretty typical of what you'll find in FamilySearch when you start looking at people of this era. You know, he was born about 1775. So we're in British colonial America, and there aren't a ton of resources available to establish relationships. Although I did a bit of digging to see that there probably are more than we think, but this is pretty typical of what you'll find in FamilySearch, in that these early American individuals have no sources in FamilySearch at all. I feel very fortunate that I did a little bit of digging and I did find James in some census records. So I've got him in the 1810, 1820, and 1830 censuses, and then I've got a deed, a territorial census, and a probate. The will and probate ties William Langford and I think it's either James or John to James Sr. through a will and probate, because when he died, William inherited land and then in South Carolina and then sold it to his brother. William, it clearly states in the will and probate that William lived in Lauderdale County, Alabama. So it's pretty good evidence tying William to James. Now, when I came and looked at James Langford and Nancy Bell in FamilySearch, I hadn't looked at it in a while, and a couple of months ago, somebody came and added some additional children, mixing up some families that were all living there in Lexington, South Carolina, and blending a couple. So I had to spend some time restoring the family back to what was here when I first started. And again, most of these children, there are no records or sources to tie them to their parents. But this seems to be the listing and arrangement of the family that's accepted by a lot of researchers from what I've been able to see. I really would like to have some sources here to establish that a little bit better. When I did some research on Lexington County, South Carolina, and I went to the FamilySearch Research Wiki, it's a fairly extensive article. And this is where you'll learn that Lexington County had a record loss. It's a burned county in 1865, so the Civil War. Most of the early records before 1839 were destroyed. So there is some record loss. However, the parent county is Orangeburg, and Orangeburg wasn't burned, and so it's possible some of the records that you need are actually in Orangeburg County. The section that I wanted to focus on is this genealogies here. So there have been some professional genealogists and others who have done published genealogies of the early families that settled in Lexington County and some of the neighboring counties. And so these books probably provide the evidence and the family arrangement that I see in FamilySearch. Unfortunately, most of these titles are only available as books at the FamilySearch library, and so I need to travel down there to actually look. There is one specifically on the Langford family, and so this needs to be looked at very carefully. You can see here it's the descendants from early Saluda River, South Carolina families, which includes Lexington, Newberry, Saluda, and Old Edgefield counties. And so I'm suspecting that some of the information that I'm seeing in FamilySearch comes from this book. And then also this Leonardo Andrea did extensive research in Lexington County and these early families. And he has thousands of pages of documents on those families. And I looked, it took me a bit of time. I found an index online, and there is a folder for the Langfords. And so I really would like to look at that to see what he had on this family. And I suspect that, again, the makeup of the family came from this research. If you are doing any research on South Carolina, definitely check out this research wiki article because it has quite a lot of information. And you'll notice up here where it says surname index for this Leonardo Andrea files, these links are now broken, so they don't work. But there's this learn more here. And this is how I found the index. It goes through the different resources available for looking at South Carolina compiled genealogies, including some forums and research boards and whatnot. And there's manuscripts, and you can see here there is some films of the Leonardo Andrea collection. So if you click this link, you'll find the catalog, and here's the index. And then if you come down here, this second one, the second filming, is one that's available that you can look at online. And so I won't show you that right now, but you can look through that and you can see there's quite a lot of families that have documents. Some of the folders only have a couple of pages, and some of the folders have a lot. So if you are working on any South Carolina family, this is something to be aware of. This Leonardo Andrea collection is very important, and it looks like it's available for viewing at the FamilySearch Library in Salt Lake City. Okay, going back to James Langford, the next person to work on for the Descendancy Research Project is Asa. Now, Asa was probably named for his brother, James's brother, Asa, who is his older brother. And I found James and Asa together in the census. So when I was adding James, the census records to James, I was also able to add them to Asa. So Asa now has some sources as well. Unfortunately, when I click through on Asa, there are no sources again. And the little bit of digging around I've done on the Langford family is that there were more than one person named Asa, so his uncle, and then some other cousins who are about the same age in the same location with that name. So it would take quite a bit of digging and looking at available sources to see if you can sort out which Asa belongs to who. I'm assuming that Asa is a legitimate child of James. There are no sources, and it's going to take a bit of work to even just start looking to see if you can sort the Asa Langfords out of who belongs to who. And so I'm going to set this one aside until I can look at the Langford published genealogies to see if we can find some more information about him. So that means I'm going to be moving on to Nancy. And as I mentioned before, there are no sources for any of the children that I've seen so far. There was a source attached to Nancy, and it was detached because some of the residue of that is here where she was supposedly in Habersham, Georgia. And I think I'm going to delete this because that source is no longer there. But in FamilySearch, she is connected to this Tyre Snellgrove. And if you remember, Susanna Langford married a Snellgrove. And so it's probably the same family. Now, I don't know if this Snellgrove is a brother to the Snellgrove that married Susanna or not. I suspect, though, they are the same family because they're in the same area of Lexington, South Carolina. Tyre is an unusual name. I used to think Snellgrove was an unusual name until I realized how many Snellgroves there were in South Carolina and Georgia. But Tyre is an unusual name, and so we should be able to hopefully just do some little bit of searching to see if we can find some source records and see if we can find anything that ties Tyre to Nancy. And then there are two children here that I think need a bit more looking because we've got two daughters named Martha, born 10 years apart. It is possible, but I'm not really sure at this point. It almost looks like a mistake. So what I did is I went over to Ancestry, actually, and see here I've got Asa pulled up where I've tagged him that he needs sources and it's unverified. But I'm going to go to his sister, Nancy, here, and I added Tyre to Nancy as a spouse. And so I'm going to click through, And you can see I've got 3 record hints now for Tyre. And I don't have any record hints for Tyre on FamilySearch. There's an error here where he's attached to some parents that are probably not his parents, because it says the mother would be over 52 years old. And so it's possible that these aren't his right parents. I'm not sure how to sort that out for right now. Well, I may detach it just because it just seems so unlikely. And you can see some of the same names for the Snellgroves here that I've seen in other places. So probably related families, once again. But let's go over to Ancestry and look at what these record hints are. Okay, so we have an 1830 census and an 1840 census. Now you remember I had James Langford and Asa Langford in those census records as well for Lexington, South Carolina. So one thing that I want to look for and see is if Tyre is living near the Langfords. That would really help us know if he's connected to the family and provide that additional evidence that Tyre and Nancy were married. So let's click through and look at the 1830 census. Now this census only has tick marks, and so we have to kind of interpret what we see. So first, let's look and see and find Tyre. Okay, here he is right here. Tyre Snellgrove. And we can see that we have one male child under the age of 5, one person between 20 and 30, that's probably Tyre. And then we've got one female between 20 and 30. Let's see if I got that right. No, between 15 and 20. Okay, so one female between 15 and 20. And just doing a quick look, I don't see any Langfords on this page. We'll look on the second page. Okay, here's a James Langford and a John Langford. And there's Asa Langford. Okay, so he's living in proximity to the Langfords in 1830. And let's look at the abstract here of people. So we have Nancy born about 1805. So in 1830, she would be 25. And it said in this census that there's one female between the age of 15 and 19. It's possible that that's just wrong. That tick mark is wrong, because she should have been about 25 years old. So let's look at the 1840 census and see if we get something a little bit different. So we have one female here between the age of 30 and 39. Now that seems right, because in 1840 she should be 35 years old. So she fits in that perfectly. And Tyre, we are saying that he was born about 1800, so he should be about 40. So we've got one male between the age of 30 and 39, so that's probably him. You'll notice that there are other children here. So we've got one female under 5, we've got a female that's between the age of 5 and 9, and then let's see, we don't have any other male children. We've got a couple of enslaved persons. So we have Tyre and then his 2 daughters and his wife. Let's look at the census record again and just make sure he's living next to the Langfords. Okay, here's Tyre Snellgrove, and we've got the tick marks again. And let's go forward. Let's look for the Langfords. Okay, so I don't see the Langfords next to Tyre Snellgrove in 1840. One thing I could do is go and look at the records I have attached to James Langford and see if I can see who's around him in 1840. Okay, I don't have James Langford in 1840, so that's why I'm not seeing him. And Asa, let's look at Asa. He's alive still in 1840. Let's see what we've got. I do have Asa in 1840, so let's look at him. Okay, he's in Kentucky at this point, so Asa migrated, if that is correct. Okay, so that index information is actually wrong. It's Lexington, South Carolina. That is something I've been seeing a lot in FamilySearch, that those indexed locations are wrong, and you need to actually look at the record if you suspect that name is right. So just something to be aware of. Okay, so let's look for Asa. Okay, here he is, Asa Langford. Okay, so let's look and see if we can see. So it's possible that Tyre Snellgrove and the Langfords, they started migrating and moving around. So it's possible that they weren't living as close together as they were previously. Yeah. Okay, so hard to say for sure, but I think the 1830 census is our best bet as far as connecting these families together. So let's go back to Tyre here. And this 1840 census does seem to indicate that a woman of the right age was living as probably espoused to Tyre. And then for sure in 1830, where we have Tyre living next to James and Asa Langford. So I'm going to go ahead and connect Tyre and Nancy together and attach these records to Tyre, and we'll go from there. Okay, so back to James Langford, because it would be nice to have an approximate marriage date for Tyre and Nancy. And one thing I did for James Langford is I did an analysis of one of the censuses that I had for him, the 1830 census, and I put it in the collaboration notes. You can see here the 1820 census. And I attributed the children that belong to this family. It says Nancy Bell's missing, so that's the wife. She's not there, apparently. Then Nancy, the daughter, we have right now is an unknown female born, because the assumption is she was born in 1805. So she would have been about 15 years old in 1820. And she doesn't fit into this female under 10 years of age. And then there's one that says between 16 and 26, and that we have as Susanna. So Nancy seems to kind of not fit in to what we have or what we know about the family. We can do a similar analysis with James. So in 1830, Nancy should be 25. So let's go and look. And she's similar in age to Susanna. So there should be two daughters unless one of them has married and moved out. So we've got one right here of between 15 and 20. And then we've got another that's between 40 and 50. So that's interesting. So Nancy and Susanna are not in the household anymore, which would make sense if Nancy is married to Tyre at that point. So I don't have, of course, a marriage date for Tyre and Nancy Langford, but we can establish that Tyre is married probably to Nancy just on his proximity to the James Langford and Asa Langford families. And of course, some more research needs to be done. So what I'm going to do is attach those census records to Tyre. And then if I find any other interesting records for this couple, then I'll come back and definitely show them. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop the video and the work that I'm doing on Tyre Snellgrove. The next place that I will look for Tyre Snellgrove is to look for wills and probates. According to FamilySearch, he died in 1850 in Lexington County, South Carolina. And so I'm going to look and see if he had any land and if there was a will or probate for him in 1850. If he died in 1850, it's possible that he's in the 1850 U.S. Census. So I may look around for some Snellgroves in Lexington County. So three places that I'm gonna look, and if I find anything, I'll come back and show that. I also may start looking at these children to see if I can sort out what's going on with the two Marthas. So I hope that was helpful. We'll see you next time.